want to start with Yitro's blessing. Now, Yitro is renowned as the father-in-law of Moshe. His name appears in the Torah several times. We know some things about him that the Torah tells us. Of course, the Medrash elaborates further. But the most notable passage in which Yitro appears is in our Parasha. Of course, he gives his name to the whole Sedra, the Sedra of the giving of the Torah. And I'm referring to when he observes that Moshe is overwhelmed with the responsibility of judging the people day by day and throughout the day, from morning till night. However, and this is my first novelty, I'm not going to talk about that. Yitro's blessing that he expressly gave to the Jewish people is quite well known, and there's a lot we could say about that. I want to share with you what Sofer says about something earlier in his interaction when the Torah describes how he arrives in the camp of the Jewish people. It's machlokes whether it was before Matan Torah or after Matan Torah. According to this sequence, the way it appears in the Torah itself, of course, it appears prior to the giving of the Torah. But as we know, the Torah does not necessarily follow a chronological arrangement. So there is an opinion he came after Matan Torah, but at any rate, he came to join the Jewish people. So the parsha begins, if you're with me in the Stone Chumash, it is on page 394, and in any Chumash you may be using, it's Parshas Yitro. We're doing Exodus chapter 18. Vayishma Yisro chayin midyan chosein Moshe. Yisro heard. What did he hear? He heard everything that God did for Moshe and for Israel, his nation, and that he took the Jewish people out of Egypt. And as a result, Yitro took Tzipporah, his daughter, the wife of Moshe, and her sons, who were the sons of Moshe, his grandsons, and they came to join the Jewish people. And the Torah says how Moshe went out to greet him. And when Yitro heard some of the details about the redemption from Egypt. And Rashi says, by the way, that initially Yitro heard especially about the splitting of the sea and about the war with Amalek. Those are the events in particular that he heard that prompted him to come and join the Jewish people. And Moshe tells him, he relates in greater detail, because the Torah doesn't say exactly what Yitro heard. So if you take a look on page 394, the last word, pasuk ches, vayisaper Moshe lechosno, Moshe related to his father-in-law, it's kol asher asa Hashem leFaro uleMitzrayim, everything that God did to Pharaoh and to the Egyptians, alodos Israel, because of the Jewish people. In other words, he rained down retribution upon them because of their oppression of the Jewish people, and in order to enable the redemption of the Jewish people. And all of the travail that they encountered along the way, which probably refers to Amalek. It may refer to the fact that they did not initially follow the more direct path, which would have brought them into conflict with the Philistines, so that if Hashem took them in a roundabout way, the splitting of the sea, he told them all about that. And God saved them. So in that pasuk, the Torah describes how Moshe, no doubt, elaborated a first-hand account of some of the experiences of the Jewish people. Then we have the fascinating verse that describes the response of Yisro. Look closely. Vayichad Yisro al kol hatova she'asa Hashem liYisrael asher hitzilo mi'am Mitzrayim. Yisro rejoiced. The word vayichad is related to the word chedva. Chedva means joy. We have, it's one of the synonyms for joy or rejoicing. Gila, Rina, Ditza, Chedva. Chedva means joy. It's also related to the word echad, one, meaning that Yitro identified with the Jewish people, like we are called Am Echad, or we speak of Achdus. Achdus is unity, and especially in the recent months, we have all been much more conscious of how our destiny is bound up with one another, and the idea of the sense of fraternity among Jews, the unity and the feeling of solidarity. These are all concepts which have come to the fore for all of us in recent months, but of course are essential to Jewish identity from earliest antiquity. And here Yisro identifies with the Jewish people. He says, you know what? We are one. I am one with you. Vayichad Yisro, that's also part of it. But the simple understanding, if you take a look at Rashi, because Rashi is our first port of call. Actually, Targum also says the same thing. Vayichad Yisro, Rashi says, Vayismach Yisro. Yisro rejoiced, Zehu Pshuto. That's the simple understanding. We'll get to the Medrash Agadah in a moment. So the Torah says, Vayichad Yisro, Yisro rejoiced. But let's see how he gave expression to his joy. Vayomer. Now take a close look in Pasuk Yud. Vayomer Yisro, and Yisro said, Baruch Hashem, Asher Hitzil Eschem Miyad Mitzrayim Umiyad Paro. Blessed is God who saved you from the hand of Egypt, from the hand of Pharaoh. Asher Hitzil Esa'am Mitachas Yad Mitzrayim, who has saved the people from under the hand, from the persecution of the Egyptians. Says the Gemara, Ksav Sofer quotes it. Now I'm telling you what Ksav Sofer says. Until now, it's been by way of intro. Ksav Sofer quotes the Gemara in Sanhedrin, which says an interesting thing, that the Jewish people are criticized. Genai hayal Yisrael shelo amru baruch ad sheba Yisro va'amar baruch. So the title of our little talk tonight, Yitro's blessing, is here. Baruch Hashem. He said, "Blessed is God who saved you." The Jewish people didn't say Baruch until then, or maybe even after then. It was left to Yisro, a visitor, a newcomer, an outsider, someone who actually did not even experience the servitude, nor the redemption, nor the bounty of the sea, nor the conflict with Amalek, nor the salvation from that war. He didn't experience any of it. He just heard about it, and he said, Baruch Hashem. He was excited. So says the Gemara, the Jewish people have something to learn, not just something to learn. I mean, we can always learn, but they're like held accountable. It's as if we fell short of maybe what would have been expected of us, that we had to learn it from Yisro. So it's, of course, a credit to Yisro, and it has a hint of a critique of the Jewish people. Says Ksav Sofer, a question which perhaps is on your mind as well. Is this really fair to find fault with the Jewish people? Ribbono shel olam, they said the whole Shiras Hayam. They said the exalted words of the poem of the Song of the Sea, one of the most uplifting and at the same time profound and lyrical expressions of exaltation, of praise. Ashir el Hashem ki ga'o ga'ar, I will sing to God because he achieved greatness. He demonstrated his greatness. Sus v'rochma ramavayam. We said it in last week's Parasha, and of course we recite it every morning. So it says Ksav Sofer, is that a criticism of the Jewish people? Are they to be faulted just because they didn't say the word Baruch? In the Song of the Sea, there are many expressions of praise, of gratitude, of exaltation, but we don't find the word Baruch. So, as Ksav Sofer, Talia B'lashon Baruch, is it dependent on the word Baruch? So that the rabbis say it was left to Yisro to say Baruch. The people didn't say blessed. The people just said other things. And Ksav Sofer acknowledges, he says, this question is asked by the Mefarshim as well. Many other commentators have wondered about this. He has the following interesting suggestion. I would like to apply it even to our own times as well. Rashi, we mentioned, says, Vayichad Yisro means Vayismach. He rejoiced. From the word chedva. But the word vayichad is related to the word chad. Chad means sharp. And Rashi says, take a look at Rashi for those who have it. If you've got the article, you certainly have it. Umedrash Agadah na'aseh b'saroch chidudim chidudim. He had goosebumps on his flesh. His flesh became prickly. You know that experience which you can encounter sometimes when something spooky or scary or eerie or menacing or maybe something wonderful happens and it gives you goosebumps. It's a phenomenon which I'm sure has been analyzed scientifically, but in any case, Yisro, when he heard about the downfall of Egypt, He heard from Moshe about some of the drama associated perhaps with the plagues and perhaps with the death of the firstborn and with the drowning of the Egyptians and Chemes Amalek, war is hell. I'm not the first one to suggest that. So even though the Jewish people prevailed in battle and Amalek attacked the Jews in an unprovoked manner, but says Rashi, he was still troubled by all of the bloodshed. He was troubled by the loss of life. And Rashi adds on something else as well. Hainu da'amri inche, this is what people say, Giora adasara darelo sivze arama ba'apeh. A proselyte, until 10 generations, which is a way of saying, it's almost a way of saying never, until 10 generations, meaning like even a distant descendant of a proselyte, do not denigrate an Aramaean, which is possibly the hand of the censor or possibly just intentionally a generic term for a Gentile in his presence. There's a certain, well, let me first tell you how Ksav Sofer relates to it. Then I'll tell you my thoughts. Ksav Sofer says that the expression of Yitro, when he said Baruch Hashem, it goes together with Rashi's comment. He rejoiced at the salvation of the Jewish people and how Hashem had intervened in nature, and he meted out justice and richly deserved retribution to the Egyptians, but he was still troubled by the loss of life. He was still, because those are maybe his countrymen. He identifies with the Jewish people because his daughter is the wife of Moshe, and he's coming to join the Jewish people. He's the first, what we call Jew by choice. But don't forget his background, his family and friends, and his compatriots. Maybe he's got the cousins in Egypt, to Paro. He probably has friends and colleagues, maybe he's still in touch with some of them. Maybe some of them, those are the same households that suffered grievously because of these plagues. According to the Torah, the firstborn, the plague of the firstborn devastated every aphorism. Never denigrate. I'm going to use the term, and I don't mean it in a unkind way, but don't denigrate goyim in the presence of a proselyte. Says Ksav Sofer, I'll get to my thoughts on it in a moment. Says this is what the Gemara means, and the Gemara says that the Jewish people didn't say Baruch until Yisro said Baruch. Yisro said Baruch, meaning he praised God for the salvation of the Jewish people, and even while he praised God for the demise of the Egyptians, but not because he was rejoicing over their downfall, just the opposite. He was troubled by their downfall. He was very upset by it. But he realized that Kishem Shemavarchem al Hatov Kin Mevarchem al Hara. Just as we bless God for glad tidings and for fortuitous events, for things that bring us joy and pleasure and satisfaction, for things that go our way, and for experiences which are pleasurable for us, one should also bless God in a similar way for misfortune. And you probably know there is a bracha, Baruch Dayan HaEmes. This is what we say when we hear bad news, and a person, Lo Aleinu, says that as well when he suffers a bereavement. When a close relative dies, or someone to whom he is close, he says the bracha, Dayan HaEmes. And it's a mitzvah to do so. We don't find that the Jewish people did that. Says Ksav Sofer, we don't find that the Jewish people expressed gratitude for their subjugation in Egypt. We don't find that they were appreciative of the fact that they were enslaved. Now, you might say, well, that's preposterous. Who would appreciate being enslaved? The answer is this philosophical bedrock position that we believe that whatever Hashem does is for the good. Whatever component of the destiny of the Jewish people, we consider it's for a beneficial outcome. And many of the Meforshim say that the Jewish people were, to use an expression coined by, I think, President Kennedy, steeled by adversity. The Jewish people were steeled by adversity, and the rabbis have an expression for that. It's called Kur HaBarzel, the crucible of iron, in which the Jewish experience in Egypt inured them, or maybe let's say, gave them the experience of the subjugation, of the suffering, and the difficulties that has enabled us to survive until this day. So it doesn't mean it was pleasurable. We don't expect anyone to be delighted in the suffering that the Jewish people experienced, certainly not those who were themselves experiencing it. But nevertheless, there is a madrega, there is a level of mavachim al hara, a level of a willingness and a preparedness and an ability to revelation about how wonderful it is that we have emerged on dry land, and our tormentors have bit the dust, or have gone to the swim with the fish, as the mafia used to say. So the theme of the Shiras Hayam is again, the exaltation, the exhilaration, the gratitude for Hashem. And there's nothing, not taking anything away from the Jewish people in that regard. And that's something which we also need to be able to appreciate and to emulate. But what they never did, and Yisro taught them to do, was to say, Baruch Hashem, even for the misfortune. According to Ksav Sofer, it is the recognition that V'yichad Yisrael, that he nasser basar chidudim, he had goosebumps because of the trouble and the awareness of the suffering that befell the Mitzrim and maybe even the Amalekim, that troubled him. But he said Baruch Hashem anyway, because he was able to recognize that the divine blessing inheres not only in the benefit that in which we delight, the benevolence, but even in the harshness. And of course, the harshness, the punishment, was for the wicked people of Egypt. But probably, and here I'm getting to my further thoughts on this, probably there were some Mitzrim who were not completely guilty. They were somehow had a firstborn son who was a few years old or a few months old, and that infant died. What did he ever do wrong? And probably there were some innocent Mitzrim as well. They were not all equally contemptible. Paro probably was an irredeemable villain. And in order to punish Paro, the whole Egypt was punished. But as the Torah itself says, at one point the Egyptians said to him, "Don't you see Egypt is in ruins?" They tried to persuade Paro. They could not succeed in doing so. So probably there were some Egyptians whose death would genuinely be, let's say, whether mourned or considered with sadness. My thoughts are about the current conflict in Gaza, and I'm not a man of the left, and I'm not a peacenik, and I'm not certainly, in league with those who want to say Kaddish for Hamas and that sort of thing at all. However, there is, I think, an element within each of us which should grieve over the loss of innocent life. And of those 20,000, let's say, or whatever the figure is, not wanting to buy into the Hamas propaganda, but I'm sure many have died, and I'm sure many of them, perhaps half or more, were Hamas terrorists, but no one can deny that a certain proportion are not. And I know that many Gazans support Hamas and are in league with Hamas. I'm not naive in that regard. But let's not forget that many of the casualties are still innocent people, women and children and the like. Again, I'm not among those calling for an immediate ceasefire at all, because I recognize the necessity of this collateral damage when you talk about an enemy that is deliberately embedded with all civilian areas. I recognize that. But I'm just saying, I think we learned from Yisro, and perhaps we know it on our own, but we learned from Yisro, according to Ksav Sofer, this awareness and this recognition of the suffering, and we should feel some dismay and some distress at the loss of innocent life. We should certainly not delight in it. And we should regard, nevertheless, those events as part of the divine plan and something that ultimately we have to accept that this is the reality. So again, I'm not trying to provide political commentary here at all. I'm just saying that the observation that Ksav Sofer advances, that the Baruch Hashem of Yisro, the novelty of it was praising God for saving the Jewish people. And also, as you'll see in the Psukim, we've seen already that he heard all about the downfall of Egypt, the downfall of Amalek, and how Hashem saved them. And he said, Baruch Hashem, even for the misfortune as well. And even for those perhaps innocent people who have perished, but that is part of the divine plan. But our responsibility certainly is to not to gloat over the loss of innocent life, but rather to recognize it is part of the divine plan. And as I said, insofar as this war is concerned, it may very well be that Israel needs to prosecute the war in the way that they are. In fact, many would say they have been too solicitous of civilian life, and Israeli soldiers have suffered as a result. That may well be. Just saying that there should be within each of us a sense of regret and sadness at the loss of innocent life, the loss of civilian life. And as I said earlier, it's well known that war is purgatory, and that is a fact of it's a fact of life itself, and it's a fact of the recent war, which hopefully will come to a favorable resolution soon. In the time we have left, I do want to turn to another subject a little bit later on in our Parsha. Moshe is presenting the prospect of becoming the nation of God to the Jewish people. You might say, well, haven't they always been? Well, not exactly. Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov are the foundations of the Jewish people. In their time in Mitzrayim, as we know, they drifted quite far away. They've been redeemed. They're facing their destiny now, but the prospect of receiving the Torah and entering into this bond, this eternal union with Hashem, lies before them. And Moshe is presenting to the Jewish people the divine proposal almost. So if you look with me on page 400, if you're with me in the Art Scroll Stone Chumash, it's Perek Yutes, chapter 19. So take a look at Pasuk Daled, the last words on that page. You have seen what I've done to Egypt. When I have borne you on the wings of eagles, I brought you to me. If you hearken to my voice, and if you safeguard my covenant, you will be a treasure to me from all the nations. Because mine is all the earth, but you will be a special treasure to me. Then the Torah says, and you will be for me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. Those are very important words. But Ksav Sofer draws our attention to the words that follow, which I have to say I never paid such close attention to. These are the words which you shall say to Bnei Yisrael, to the children of Israel. This refers to the few verses prior, and we have the instruction. These are the words that you shall say. Now, it almost goes without saying, because the Torah already said this, what you shall say. And it's interesting that the Torah now reiterates or summarizes, these are the words that you shall say, El Bnei Israel. Now Rashi is alert to that. And Rashi, take a look with me at Rashi, a few words only in Rashi. Eila Hadvarim. If you're with me in the Stone Chumash, it's in the left-hand column, 3 lines from the top. Whatever Chumash you're using, if you've got Rashi, look at Eila Hadvarim, the last comments of Rashi on Pasuk Vav. Rashi says, Eila Hadvarim, lo pachot v'lo yoter, not less and not more. Lo pachot v'lo yoter. In other words, Rashi is explaining why the Torah says Eila Hadvarim. These are the words, these are exact words. Don't say more, don't say less. Okay, let's comment of Rashi. Says Ksav Sofer, this is a bit strange. Would we have thought that Moshe, who was so faithful and so um, you know uh, conscientious is the word I was looking for, so conscientious, would only tell part of the message, or he would reformulate it, or he would compress it. Hashem told him 3 or 4 sentences, and he'll compress it into 2. Why would we think that? So the Torah says Eila Dvarim, and Rashi tells us it means not more and not less. Besides which, what's wrong with saying more? What if Moshe elaborates? What if Moshe adds a few words of encouragement or enthusiasm of his own, a few words of endorsement of his own? After all, Moshe has a bit of credibility with the people now. Took them out of Egypt. He brought down the plagues upon Pharaoh and all the Egyptians, split the sea. He was responsible for the victory against Amalek because he stood on the mountain. He raised his hands, as the Torah describes in detail at the end of last week's Parasha. The people, you would have thought, would regard Moshe as a very authoritative source, a very reliable, or certainly a respected expert opinion on this idea of the covenant with God. So therefore, we might have thought Moshe would elaborate a bit more. And what's wrong if he does? Asks Ksav Sofer. Why does the Torah say, according to Rashi, Eila Dvarim, not more and not less? So not less is obvious, not less. Why would we think Moshe would say less? Not more. Why is he told not to do more? What's wrong, as I said, with elaborating and as I said, giving his own independent endorsement to the idea of the covenant with God? Says Ksav Sofer an interesting idea. He says, you know why? Because if Moshe had added his own words of persuasion, then maybe the people a few years later, or maybe generations later, would say, you know what? We didn't really want the Torah, but we had this sales pitch that was so slick and was so compelling, was so convincing, it was so mesmerizing, and we had this salesman who persuaded us and bamboozled us, and that's why we signed on, and we really didn't want to do it. We shouldn't have done it. If we looked at it carefully without any outside encouragement or persuasion or pressure, high pressure sales tactics, then we never would have taken the Torah. In order to avoid that, said to Moshe, this is what you say. Don't add anything more. Don't add any word. Moshe, when he spoke to the people and he told them the words of God, he also told them, Moshe told the people, I could add more, because you might wonder if Moshe does not add more. So we've explained why Hashem didn't want him to add words of his own. But, if you've ever considered buying a product from a salesman, it doesn't mean someone who's coming door to door to try to pitch the subject of the sale to you. Maybe you want to buy a car, so you go to the car dealership and you talk to them about the car. Or even, just for argument's sake, you want to buy a used car, or you want to buy a home, or something that you want to buy, and there is an expert there who presumably would like to sell it to you. And he is very lukewarm in his endorsement. Or, my friends, even a shidduch idea. If you know someone who is a friend of a person with whom you're contemplating marriage bonds, and you speak to that friend, and the friend is lukewarm in his endorsement of the prospective bride or groom, you feel as if, reading between the lines, there's a lack of enthusiasm here. He hasn't spelled out the problem, but I don't hear that enthusiasm. As I said, if you want to buy a house or a car or something like that, you would expect the prospective seller to have some enthusiasm for the product. If Moshe doesn't endorse it, then you might say, well, why isn't he telling us anything more? Therefore, says Ksav Sofer, Moshe said exactly that. He said exactly what Hashem told him to say, including El Hadvarim. The reason I'm not telling you my own opinion and I'm not elaborating upon it, Hashem told me not to. Hashem told me, El Hadvarim asher tedaber. These are words that you say. That's what I'm saying. I just want to add on that Ksav Sofer doesn't mention this, but the Meforshim say maybe this is why Moshe had a speech impediment, as the Torah says clearly a few times. Maybe this is why. He was not glib. He was not a master orator. He was not a mesmerizing speaker. Moshe did not have that kind of gift of gab. So if he had, then people might have said at the time or subsequently, the people were bamboozled by Moshe. He captivated them. A person who is a gifted speaker with charisma, with self-belief, can persuade people to do a lot of things, which if they were left to their own careful analysis would never do it. Therefore, Moshe was not gifted as an orator or as a communicator. Therefore, Moshe stammered so that the people would never say that was because Moshe was such a slick salesman. That's why we accepted the Torah from him, and that's why we followed him. On the contrary, Moshe did not have that gift. If the people accepted Moshe and they were prepared to embrace that which Moshe gave them, it was because of the content of the message, not because of the gifted communicator that Moshe himself was. So just to summarize, we've said that a Yitro's blessing is not just what the Torah says explicitly later on, the suggestion of the judiciary. Of course, that's true as well. But his literal blessing, when he said Baruch Hashem, and the Gemara says that the Jewish people are to be faulted, they didn't learn on their own to say Baruch Hashem. They had to be taught by this father-in-law of Moshe. We suggested at a deeper level, it means that he said not only blessed is God for the good, but he's even blessed for the misfortune. And the misfortune of the Egyptians troubles me. But nevertheless, I realize it's part of the divine plan, and therefore I'm prepared to say Baruch Hashem, and we have to be prepared to say Baruch Hashem as well. I added on my own, and maybe there is a lesson here for all of us vis-a-vis the loss of life in Gaza. And again, I'm sure that many of the people who have died richly deserve their retribution. Honest for me to say, but the terrorists who want to murder Jews are definitely fair game. But inevitably, I'm sure there are casualties and there are those who have suffered as well. And we should not gloat over their suffering and their demise, but rather we should hope for a resolution and a favorable resolution, which again, I don't want to get into politics. I'm out of my depth. And then we've said just now that El Hadvarim, that Moshe was told, don't elaborate so that people won't say it was Moshe's sales pitch. And on the contrary, Moshe was probably not, according to the Torah itself, according to Moshe Rabbeinu himself, was not a gifted orator at all. And nevertheless, his success was because of who he was and the message that he conveyed to the Jewish people. Let us continue each in our own way to hearken to the message of Moshe Rabbeinu and the Torah itself, and we can hopefully together continue to learn more from the brilliant insights of Ksav Sofer, and I look forward to sharing more and more in the weeks ahead. Thank you very much, and have a wonderful Shabbos.